Hey guys, Coach Bricks.
Coach James.
The game changes. Now, here's a question to every single person out there, all right? And it's also good to James, because James has no idea what this topic is going to be about. That's why I brought him on for this one, so I didn't want to tell him. What if what we're doing, okay, is totally wrong? What if the strength industry is totally off in what we're doing? Now, that's the question I'm posing, because honestly, I would love to know. I'd love to know people's feedback on it. But the more I study and the more I look at and the more I read the Bible, okay, because that's where a lot of the sources come from, and try to understand the whole makeup of the human being, okay, why God created us this way, why we function this way, why we're so far away from what we used to be and people are okay with that. But what if all this lifting stuff that we're doing is totally wrong? What if how we're training athletes is totally wrong? Training human beings, totally wrong. You know, I had this thing that somebody popped up one time. It said something about like, you know, most old people's injuries are because they still think they're young.
Yes.
So the whole thing is based on, I think I put that up as one of my stories, that you get hurt because you still think you're young. And I thought to myself, because I saw the comments that the one guy had posted and all this kind of stuff, and said, yeah, man, I'm still sore from like 3 days ago. Yeah, I still think it. And I think to myself, I'm like, we've come so far away from what we should have been. Like I said in a lot of my other talks that we talked about, James, is we're hunters and gatherers. It wasn't hunters and gatherers till we're 20 and then we're done, okay? It was hunters and gatherers till we died. We had to go out and we had to find our food. Because if we didn't find our food, we were going to starve to death. And we talked about this with DNA. DNA has not changed. So if our DNA tells us that that's what we need to do, then why are we so far away from doing that anymore? We've gotten this comfortable lifestyle, and it goes back to our lifting. We lift these weights, okay, to be huge. I mean, we know kids that have put on 20, 30, 40 pounds, right? But is that exactly how we're supposed to be? Now you say, well, that's for their sport. Okay, but what damage are we doing? What long-term damage are we doing to the human body? Was the body supposed to have all this extra weight on? So I always bring up the Spartans. I'm fascinated by the Spartans, as many people are. The warriors. You know, I put up a post that they walked 30 miles for 8 straight days to get to Thermopylae to battle the Persians, okay, from Sparta to Thermopylae. It's about 230, 240 miles. So they were averaging about 30 miles a day. Now, how many people you know could do that? The average person takes steps of 3,000 to 5,000 steps per day. They were taking 63,000, okay, on average per day. Maybe a little less if you're a little taller, a little more if you're a little shorter. Think about that, okay? These guys had to go, and then they had to fight a battle against the Persians who had 30,000 people. They had 300. Now think about that. With minimal food, because they weren't like, oh, let's go stop at the grocery store on the way there, okay, and wherever, and pick up some. They had to learn how to do that. So when I look at this stuff and I see these comments, I'm like, guys, you're not understanding. Your body hurts because you got away from what God intended you to do. When you're young and you're agile and you're moving and all this kind of stuff, that's what you're supposed to do till the day you die. But see, you stop. There used to be an old theory that I talked to a farmer about one time. He said, you know, if you picked up a cow every day, every single day you went and picked up that calf from the day it was born, you should technically be able to pick it up, okay, because your body will adapt till you know it's an adult age. Now, I don't 100% agree, because I mean, probably cows are pretty freaking heavy, I guess, with the height of them. And I think it'd be very difficult. Maybe when they're young, you can pick them up, a little easier to grab them and stuff like that. But the theory is still there that if I continue to do those things, then my body will continue to adapt to what it should do. It adapts to our inactivity. So as we get older, what happens? We get 20, 25, we get married, we get lazy, okay, because we say we work all the time and we got to take the kids here, we take the kids there. We've gotten away from that stuff. We've really truly gotten away from who we truly are, right? And then we go out and try to play a weekend basketball or volleyball or field hockey, whatever. And then our bodies aren't prepared for it, and then boom, then they're sore and they hurt for days. Well, they should hurt for days. You neglected it and then you expect it to be, well, it doesn't happen like that. But imagine if you went out and sprinted every day. Imagine if every adult in this country, from the time you stopped playing a sport, all right, age whatever, 17, okay, some of us, some later, okay, you were done with your playing career. You went out and you continued to sprint 3-4 times a week. Could you imagine the difference we'd have in this country? Could you imagine how much less problems we'd have? Now, everybody say, well, we'd have more. No, we wouldn't. We would have adapted right through. Now, people who stop and then try to pick things up too hardcore, Yeah, they have issues. There's no question about it. So they go through trials, and then they can't handle it. But also the lifting part, right? When I talked about the Spartans here of traveling, they could be huge people. They couldn't have been all that movie 300. That's not what they look like. Okay, I'm sorry. They were probably strong as oxen. They're probably stronger than any one of us, but they probably weren't overly huge. And the reason being is they had to fight in a war. They had to be able to get their shields up and hold it up there for a while and battle forever. Well, you have all that muscle on you, guess what? You're going to get tired. Ask any big guy and have him hold his arms up here for a while like he's boxing. He's going to get tired compared to a smaller guy who might be just as strong, if not stronger, but doesn't have all that muscle behind it. So are we actually getting further away from where we should be? Because we're in a pursuit to look a certain way. It's the aesthetics of it. It's not so much the health of it. Yes, I might be gym strong, that I can squat 800 pounds. But can I do the things that a farmer does? Works on the farm, especially in the summer, 12, 14, 16 hours. In the winter, guess what? Whether it's snowing out, they still got to take care of the animals. They can't sit inside. They got to take care of it. It's raining. They still got to take care of it. So they got to keep working. So they constantly have to keep moving. Now, where a lot of farmers get wrong and stuff like that is they don't train, okay, of where some of the weaknesses are. So they just keep working, granted, and they're moving constantly, which is great, okay, better than most. But you also got to be able to know what to train and how to train. And it's not training for all this muscle, it's training for strength, training the fascia. Okay, something that a lot of people don't want to talk about. It's starting to gain more popularity, which is great. I think it's phenomenal. I remember reading about it in college, huge debate over a lot of stuff that was going on in college. I kind of went away from it, but I'm now coming back over the last 5 years because of what happened to me. And it's fascinating because the fascia connects us all together, which is phenomenal, but it's also very much has to be lubricated throughout the whole time. So what happens is as you get older and you're not moving as much, we become more sedentary, okay, which is many adults do after their playing days are done. That fascia becomes drier. So then you start to get stiffness in your low back and in your hamstrings, and we call it tightness. And then we say, we need to stretch. We don't need to stretch. We need to move dynamically, if not explosively, to get it to lubricate again. It loves that stuff. Just think about it. I'm a hunter and gatherer, and you and I are going out, right? We got to catch that tiger over there. We're going to have to sprint most likely at some point. Okay, well, that thing's coming after me now all of a sudden, and James and I run. I sure as heck ain't gonna be last, because that guy can be last. All right, they can get James, they ain't getting me. All right, but or we got to run after something. Okay, maybe chase it before we spear it or something. Okay, think about it. So I'm not saying I'm 100% correct. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying let's start having discussions on, are we training as human beings? The Earth Strong movement was founded on that basis of a spiritual, mental, and physical being combining as one, as the human is, and then training it to maximize the human being. Understanding it has to understand how to overcome rain, storms, heat, humidity, snow. It has to be able to do that. We've taken that away from it and robbed it. Okay, and that's why people complain when it's humid and hot out. Oh, it's so hot, I need to get my air conditioner. Okay, it's so cold out. Because you become soft-minded. That all goes together. The spirit has to feed the mind and the body, but when the spirit's weak, guess what? The mind and the body are going to be weak. But the mind has to also be strong so it can overcome the physical. It's just simple how it works. But we're not doing those things. So your take on it, James, because you know you came up through, graduate not too long ago.
Yep.
Okay, much sooner than I did. Okay, and I know they probably didn't teach much of this stuff. It was your basic weightlifting stuff, all that kind of stuff. So why don't you take us through, what you learned and what your thought process is on? Because maybe you're different than me. That's why I did not want to tell them what it was, because I wanted to put them on the spot.
So I think I can actually myself be a pretty good example to this. Coming up through college and whatnot, doing a lot of the typical strength training that I always did for my sports that I played, but there was a lot of just the typical big, heavy compound movements that we're always taught. Our back squats, deadlifts, our barbell bench press, all those kind of core lifts. And that was all what I did up through college. And even once I started here with my internship, which was about 3 years ago, I still did all those same things. And I remember the other job that I worked at part-time, I would come in the morning and I would tell Dave, I was like, man, my back hurts, like all this stuff hurts, but I do this all day and I can still do it, but like I'm hurting and like doing the lifts, I can't really lift right now. I want to, because I know that that's still good for me, but getting back into that and having to rework everything and understand, man, all that stuff really isn't good for me, and changing up how I lift to now how I do now, which is completely different. And I very rarely have any problems. And if I do, we go back to the same topic that we've talked on before, understanding of what I need to do to correct those problems to where I don't have those problems anymore, to where I don't have to do pills, because I used to take Tylenol, Aleve, all that same stuff all through college because that's what I was always told. And now I don't even know the last time I took any of that. And I rarely have problems. I think one of the other points that you mentioned was the athletes that we have that once they're done sports, they go off, they get their jobs full time, they get married, whatnot, have kids, and they stop playing their sport. Is they don't have anything to work towards anymore. And understanding of finding certain things to maybe work towards, because that was me. Like, I haven't played sports. I tried playing soccer last year, it just wasn't for me anymore. So finding different things. So I've done the different events and races and things like that, because it's giving me something to work towards. Now coach might give me crap for whatever I'm doing, but it gives me something to work towards. It gives me something to challenge myself on outside of what I'm doing, and it keeps me always doing something new, finding a new goal or a new challenge to constantly work towards. Whereas you see the athletes or former athletes now that they don't have that structure that they had in college, where they were waking up 4 days a week at 5 o'clock to go lift at 6. They had these scheduled practices, everything was structured for them, and now they don't. They have this free time to where they know they got to be at work at 9 or 8 or whenever. They work till 5. That's their structure. So they don't know anything else outside of that now. So when they wake up early, they might say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym at 6 o'clock. Alarm goes off at 6. It's comfortable now. I'll just sleep in. I'll do it tomorrow. Or they get off work. Man, that was a long day at work. I'm too tired to go to the gym now. So if they find those excuses, because again, they don't have the structure of their sport that they used to have, and they don't have a goal that they're working towards anymore. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen. And then obviously the athletes that we see that are definitely our college athletes, because we don't really see as much with the high school athletes, I think, to where they have those big programs, more in the football, where you see those programs asking them to bench, squat, and all those big lifts. You see it in the college athletes, where they come back in the summer, they come back in the winter, and they're banged up because they're asked to, hey, I need you to squat 95% of your 1 rep max today. And they come in the next week and we're like, well, what's wrong? Well, I had squats yesterday. That shouldn't mean anything. You shouldn't be hurting after doing squats. But it's the movement that we constantly hit on, that there's no real purpose behind putting 500, 600, 700 pounds on your back, because what is that really actually doing for your sport?
And I think you're right. I think, we all have to have a reason why. I think that's one of the biggest things, especially when we're done with our sport. What's the reason why? And as a man, I talk about this all the time. One of our podcasts was on the Dad Bod, and I had tons of people reach out to me about this. Once you're done, really think about this. Once you're done with your sport, there's even more of a reason to work out and take care of your body. Especially as a man, your job is to protect and provide. Okay? Especially when you're married and you have kids. If you can't do those things, those basic things, then you're failing. You have failed. Okay? That's what a man's to do. I'm sorry, that's what it is. Written in the Bible, God talks about it, okay? We're there to protect and provide. We have to find reasons of why we get up. Like, people ask me, well, how do you get up between 3 and 3:30 every day? There's a reason. I got 2 kids at the house. I got my wife, right? My job is to get up, make sure I take care of this body I have, so I can provide for them, so I can do the things, so I can work outside. I've worked outside all the time this summer. It's been humid as all get out and raining. Okay, that's all it seems like it does. The sun comes out, humid as all get out, and boom, downpour, right? That's all it does. Not once during that time did I complain. Not once. Because I got my body right. And I also know what the goal is. Then, if something's off, right, I come in after, a shift of being out 4, 5, 6 hours, and something's not right, I go and I address it. Then that's when I work on in the gym. Hey, I got to work on this aspect because I know I'm lacking here. That's when I take the gym. Okay? I don't have the gym and then hopefully I'll build around my lifestyle around the gym. No, I build the lifestyle, my lifestyle, and then the gym complements what I need to do, but I still get in there 5, 6, 7 days a week to do that. But that's the question I really want to ask. I really want to know, are we on the right path of what we're supposed to be doing as humans? This is humans. Now I understand you're going to have all these sports performance coaches. But Dave, they're getting ready for the sport. And if they can't lift 700 pounds, they're not going to play. Okay. Once again, James said it. How much is too much? How much do you really need? How much on your back to make you a better athlete? If I'm not becoming a better athlete and I keep, putting more and more weight on, what am I at? I talked about this because I heard this gentleman speak, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, when he said that he went to a football program, it was a Division III, and he was one of the intern strength coaches there. He said, we had 3 guys that could squat 800 pounds. All 3 guys had a medically red shirt or medically retired because their backs were so jacked up. He said, every single year that I was there, we were 3-8. He said, we had the strongest team probably in America, but they were always 3-8. So that strength doesn't always equate to what's on the field. Yes, I understand you have to have a coach. I understand all this kind of stuff. But are we looking at things incorrectly? Are we training the fascia? Are we training the explosiveness that we need? Or are we looking at just number? And hopefully that number equates to what it is. Unfortunately, that's what most people do, especially in the high school level. Now, college, I think, have caught on to a little bit where they really hammer home a lot more plyometrics, but some have not. But the high school levels, it's all about, egotistical. That's all it is. It's like an ego mindset. Well, I squat 600 pounds. Great. You freaking can't move, but that's okay. You know what I mean? So that's what I wanted to get in the debate with. I wanted to discuss, are we on the right path or on the wrong path? Okay? Is it okay for athletes to squat and deadlift and all this kind of stuff, knowing that most likely all that weight's going to eventually jack them up? Okay? Because that's not how the human body was designed, with all that excess, poundage on it. That's why people who are overweight, who are fat, right, have a hard time doing a lot of things. Too much weight, all right? Their body starts to fail, okay? Is it also going to happen with that? I don't know. I think it's a topic that we need to get more into, and the more I look at it, the more I'm trending towards, hey, I want to get back to how a human moves. I want to get back to that point. I know people are going to be, how's a human move? I think we need to go back to the Bible. We need to go back to our ancestors. We need to start looking at these things a little bit more and saying, maybe they weren't shredded like that. Maybe they did have 8, 10, 12% body fat because they needed that stuff to maintain, because they might not have got food. So they had to make sure that they had some excess, weight on them. Not tons. Okay, I'm not talking for a male. I think 10% is perfect. Female, 18%. I wouldn't get much lower than that. But having a little bit. But I don't think they need to be shredded up either. Yeah, it looks great. But if it's not functionally helping me get to where I need to be, is it really worth it? And in the long run, will it destroy my body? I don't know. I would love to see, statistics of how many people have played sports and now are all broken up. I can read about them online because they're always talking about how their body hurts all the time. Maybe we need to start going back and understanding that don't stop, continue on, and continue to train like an athlete that's playing a sport, because everybody's an athlete, but an athlete that's playing a sport to the day you die. Okay? Maybe not the same intensity, but at least 3-4 days a week, you should be sprinting, plyometrics, something to that effect. And I'm not talking about running. I'm not talking about distance, because that's a whole other topic that we can get into at some point. I'm talking about sprints, plyometrics, explosive movements in the weight room, lighter weights, but explosive movements, okay? I'm not against lifting heavy, though, okay? I still think lifting heavy is great, especially for men, increases testosterone, but shouldn't be done always as what everybody wants to do, all right? So anything to add to that, James?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I know we'll probably touch on this more in a future episode.
And I would, like I said, I think more people, I'd love to have discussions with them, because I think the Earth Strong movement was created out of this, and I see the benefit it's done for me and for many other people, so I know it benefits. And when I talk about people going into the weight room, it doesn't have to be all this heavy lifting and grunting and groaning and stuff like that. I think there's some exercises should be heavy, but the majority of stuff is how explosive can we stay and maintain our bodies to be what God intended us to be, hunters and gatherers, and understanding, provide and protect if you're a male, that we need to do. So let me know, reach out, comment, please, let me know. Have yourself a blessed day. It's Coach Bricks.
Coach James.
Game changer.